try to read the instructions, they read like a foreign language sometimes. It's written by an engineer, so it gets a little confusing. If you don't know the terminology correctly, it'll mess you up. And this timer specifically, you can do up to 3 different programs: a program A, a program B, and a program C. Each program can be started up to 4 times per day because there's multiple start times. This is not a zone start time. This is a program start time. Okay. So the way you want to look at programs is if Florida, we're pretty much tropical year round. We don't really change too much climate-wise. Yes, we get cold spells and like stuff like that. But if you're up north or out west, where you go through heavy seasonal, changes throughout the year, you would run a different program dependent on the season. All right. So, but because we're tropical for the most part, you only really need to run one program here in Florida.
Even dry and wet season, it's the same?
Yeah, you're basically, so the only thing that changes technically is per St. John's, and they follow daylight savings program. They're the water management district for this area. Okay. So they set up the watering restrictions. It's not us that does that. And what they decided is they went by address on residential customers. They basically, during the daylight savings time, I call it daylight savings or spring summer programming, they basically allow you to water twice a week. Okay. And dependent on your address, so if you're an even numbered address, you're Thursday, Sunday currently. Okay. And then if you're an odd numbered address, with Sunshine Water, we're not the water police. We don't even have the enforcement capability. Now we will, if I'm working next door and the irrigation came on at the neighbor's house or something like that, we have tags as reminders with St. John's, the website that goes right to their watering restrictions. We'll just do it as a courtesy. Hey, we noticed that you were watering on the incorrect day. Check your timer or go to the website to check for current water restrictions. Right. It's not our rules at St. John's. Yeah. Now, when we time change in the fall to Eastern Standard, you lose your weekday and you're going to be a weekend only. Okay. There is also a suggestion in the rules, no watering more than an hour per zone. There is exceptions to that rules. And I do notice that you do have the MP rotors, which is the multi-stream rotary nozzle. Okay. It is a more economical and it's a more conservative head, so it uses less water. But because it uses less water, you do have to water longer.
Okay.
So that's a catch on that, but they're more efficient. The way you want to look at those heads is if we just got done running a marathon, okay, and there was no water during that entire event. But now we're waiting at the finish line and your friends are holding this big cooler of water. Do you want it all at once or do you want it in small increments over a longer period of time? Mm-hmm. You want it in small increments, right? Why is that? Because our bodies are designed specifically to process water or anything at a certain rate, right? So if you try to overload the baler per se, like going to a buffet, and you feel miserable because you just ate 20 plates. Right. But if it's snow crab, that's different. But it's the way our bodies are designed to process. The way you look at your landscape, it is a living entity, so it's only designed to absorb water so fast. It can only drink so fast. No matter how much water you dump on it, it's only drinking so much. So with high flow rates, high precipitation rates, so that's how many inches per hour those sprinklers put out across the coverage areas. Mm-hmm. With those high precip rates, you're only getting about 40 to 60% actual absorption into your landscape before the rest of it is lost, either through evaporation or percolation. Your root system for your normal southern turf, which is what we have here, it is a St. Augustine or a Fortan. The root system itself, the trunk of the tree, I call it, it's more surface. And then off of that trunk, that runner is how the St. Augustine thatches and runs. It doesn't actually germinate, but the way it spreads and runs is it lays that trunk of that tree and it goes outbound. And then off of that, every other joint of that runner, there's finger roots that actually go down. That's the subsurface root that penetrates, that's the absorption portion. So they average about 6 to 12 inches. So once the water goes past that point, you've lost it forever. That water's not going to come back up naturally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you want to water with lower flowing heads and water a little bit longer and give that absorption time. They suggest on the restrictions that there is no watering between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Yeah, okay. That's the hottest portion of the day anyways. Mm-hmm. So there's high evaporation rates. You could risk burning the landscape because all those water droplets become microscopes. That's where that burning term comes into play. It's not necessarily that it happens, but the potential is there. But also too, normally during the day when you've got different temperature changes, so the coolness of the night, that cool air, and then the warming trend, daylight when the sun's out, you've got thermal changes that generates wind. Wind deflects sprinklers in a normal situation like your standard sprayers and your standard rotors. And the NP rotors are specifically designed to cut through the wind because it's a multi-stream. It's designed to cut through.
Okay.
So that's another reason why you don't really want to water during the day too. So wind generation, high evaporation rates, and then the sun's out and all that stuff. So it's not really beneficial to the landscape.
All right.
So best thing to do is honestly is to use 7 o'clock as sunrise. That's what I use as a baseline year round, regardless of time change. It might fluctuate a little bit, but I use 7 a.m. as a baseline as sunrise. So you want the system to be off. So finish watering 1 to 2 hours prior to sunrise. So you want to water in the cover of darkness, but you don't want to water in the evening either because then you're leaving everything wet and saturated all night long. So excess moisture is going to stay. It's not going to evaporate. So when you leave things wet and moist for a long period of time, you get molds and funguses. And when you get molds and funguses, that becomes a food source for bugs and grubs. So a lot of times, your insect problems are there's an underlying cause. It's not that they just showed up. There's a reason why they're there. There's either a food source or there's something that they're looking for that you have. And a lot of times it's those molds and funguses that they're going after. And what's the cause of that? Watering incorrectly, too much, excess water, stuff like that. You get dollar weed, which I call the lily pad of the lawn. Anytime you see dollar weed, there's excess water there. It's either standing water or there's too much. You could potentially have a leak or a break or a crack in a line. So there's excess water in a certain area, and that's where dollar weed starts popping up. It's really hard to get rid of once you get it. So yeah, there's a lot of things that can actually go into. And honestly, you really shouldn't have to chemically fertilize if you have a good watering plan.
Okay.
If you schedule your watering correctly, that should be sufficient enough to maintain a property. But I mean, you can always throw down, some extra fertilization to green it up and stuff like that. But then also too, with extra fertilization, you do have to water a little bit more.
Okay.
To the timer, so in a normal situation, the selector is in the run position. So that's the smaller portion of the selector. So right now it's in the run. Right now we're seeing what time, what day of the week, Thursday, time of day. And then on the side here, I'll basically explain that when we get to that portion. But these lines right here reference a selection. So, first one is date and time, so that's current date and time right now. It's not future, it's current. So anytime something's flashing on the screen, that's what the selector, the mouse, the cursor, however you want to look at it, that's what it's on. To actually move the mouse or the cursor or the selection, we use the right or the left arrow key, it doesn't matter. It's a looped menu, so it'll go forward or backwards. To change that menu option, we use the plus and the minus. Okay? So the first option right now is year. It is 2022. If I press the right arrow key once, it goes to month. So as we can see, 9 is flashing, so it is September. Press it again, that's the day. So today is the 15th, and it even tells us the day of the week down here. Today is Thursday. Okay? Press it again, that goes to time of day. So the first one that's flashing is the PM. So there's an AM, PM, and a 24-hour. So if you like the military time, I've got some retired military personnel, it's just drilled into them. They kind of like that when I show them. To change that, you just use the plus or the minus. So right now it's AM, if I hit it again, it's 24. But as of right now, it's 1:44 and it is right there. So we'll just leave it as standard time. So we'll go back to the PM setting. So that's the AM, PM.
Okay.
Press the 1 again, so it goes to time. So 1 is flashing. This is where you'll have to physically change it. The timer will not auto change. There are smart timers on the market where they're Wi-Fi capable, they're linked in, they will auto change when it comes to daylight savings and Eastern Standard. This is not that way. You can make it that way. I believe with the Hunter, there should be the remote setting. Sometimes you can link these in. It just depends on if this is the newer version of it or not. They don't really designate it on the front. But they do have Hunter's got them, Rainbird, Orbits. I'm partial to the Orbits when it comes to a smart timer. It's called the Beehive. You download the app on your phone, tablet, or whatever, and you can literally control anything remotely. Rainbird, it's called the TM2 timer. Hunters, I don't recall if the Pro C does it or not with the app. But there are smart timers, but they're pretty cool. You can kind of play with them. So that's date and time current, and if I press it again, it goes to minute, and then it just rolls back. So now we're back on year. But I can go forward or backwards, it doesn't matter. It's a looped menu.
All right.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, now this gets into the programming aspect. So right now, this is our program start time. So the first time that we're telling program A to start is 12 a.m. So basically midnight.
Okay.
Midnight on program A is what we're starting it as. If I press the right arrow key, there is a second start time. So as you can see, there is a time there. We're coming on again at 3.
Is it?
If I press the right arrow key again, the third
off.
start time is off. The fourth start time is off.
Okay.
So our reason why we're using a little bit too much water is because we're running twice a day on program A. We're running once at midnight. The program is coming on.
Yeah.
So I'm sending you to the store in the car at midnight to go pick up milk and eggs and bread. I'm sending you back to the store on the same morning at 3 o'clock.
Wow.
So we're just using more water. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this since we're in here. I'm gonna put this as a 2 a.m. The selection on this is only 15-minute increments
Okay.
on start time. So you can't start it at 11:48. It won't allow that. It's a solid 1 o'clock, 1:15, 1:30, 1:45. They're 15-minute increments on start times.
Okay.
So if I press the right arrow key, we go to that 3 a.m. So basically what you do is you go down to midnight. Midnight, one more turns it off. So midnight is a selection. At 12 a.m. is a selection, but you got to go one past that. So between 11:45 p.m. and the 12 a.m., there's the other option in there, which is the off. Because if I press negative down, see, 11:45 p.m.
Okay.
So 11:45 p.m. is a selection. If I go up, that's the off, and then I can go to midnight.
Good. Okay.
But you don't have to run 4 start times. Okay. So that's program A. If I press this button right here, that's the program button, the PRG button. So we're still on program A. Okay. If I press the PRG button, that changes to a different program. So we're checking. We know that mom's taken the car right to the grocery store twice, so we just changed that. Now let's see if you're taking the Harley out. Okay,
Yeah.
which she doesn't know, which you're not.
Okay.
So the first one's off, the second one's off, third's off, and the fourth is off.
Great.
So you're not driving 2 cars. But guess what? You're borrowing the neighbor's car. So program C, because remember, there's 3 different programs in here. So you could be running all 3 and not know it. Okay. So as of right now, program 1 is off. The start time, 2, 3, and 4 is off.
Okay.
Good.
Good.
So the problem that we were having is the reason why guys were using the amount of water that you were using was because you were watering twice on a day. We don't know what the days are yet. We're getting to that point.
All right.
And who knows how long?
So start times, the reason why the manufacturer put those in there as multiples is if you're in like a really, really hard landscape or something like that, there is internal programming, and I want to get to that because that's hidden programming, and that's a key sequence. You got to specifically know how to access that. There's delay between valves. You can actually extend the delay. So you actually, like if you were on a well or something like that, you want the system to repressurize before the next zone comes on. So you want it to delay like 5 minutes instead of the 30-second delay. You can extend that by hidden programming. There's also a run soak program. It's all hidden. It's not on the main selection screen. It's a program access that you got to access through a key sequence. But there's a run soak program. So if I need to water the front yard for 20 minutes, but I'm a heavy, hard soil, really, really, rocky or whatever it is. If I water for 5 minutes, I start getting runoff or erosion, but I still need 20 minutes in that area. I run it for 5 minutes, shut it down for 10 to give it soak time, then it comes back on for 5. It's a run soak is what it does. But the timer, you can actually program that in, but that's hidden programming. But you don't really have to worry about that here. Start times were good. Okay, now we're getting into the run times. So you do have, you've got 4 zones. red, blue, green, and yellow. So that's your zones. So zone number 1, we don't know what area of the yard we're going to physically run it, but you're currently set for 45 minutes. It might seem like a lot, but like I said, the sprinkler nozzles that you have, the MP rotors, they do use a lot less. If you had like standard type spray rotors, you're probably using like 18, 20 gallons a minute. You might be running 12, 15 gallons. I don't know. We're going to clock it. We'll find that out.
Okay.
But zone number 1, station 1, area 1, just depends on what term you like to use. The manufacturer puts station. So station 1 is 45 minutes on program A. Press the right arrow key. That's station 2. So station 2 is set for 30 minutes. Station 3 is set for 45 minutes. And station 4 is for 1 hour. Okay. So, and if you ever want to zero one of these, so then once you get past that, because it knows that there's no more modules connected, so it gives you a total runtime. So right now your program A is running for 3 hours in total. Okay. So, but if you ever wanted to zero one of these out, so like say for instance, the backyard is zone 2 and you're having a pool put in or a big patio extension or whatever, make sure you stop at 0. There's a reason why I'm showing you this, because a lot of people make this mistake too. Okay, so I'm stopped at 0, right? But it doesn't actually stop at 0.
Oh, it goes on to 6. Uh-oh.
That's not 6 minutes, that's 6 hours.
Wow.
So if you ever want to zero one, okay, that's happened in the past, people have called and said the irrigation system won't shut down for a day and a half. When I get there, I find out that they try to zero something. Yeah, the basement takes you back to the penthouse.
Okay.
Why the programmer put that in there, they should have made 0 stop and not allow you to reverse. But for some reason, once you take the elevator to the basement to 0, if you go past, it doesn't just stop at the basement, it takes you right back to the penthouse. So it's goofy how they did that and why they did that. I still don't understand it. But yeah, yours is a 6 hour.
Okay.
So just make sure if you ever try to zero one of the zones out, that you stop at 0. So program, I'm just gonna press the program again. So program B, that's 0 on zone 1, 2, 3, 4. Total time is 0 on program B, so that's good. Program C is all 0, but I still like to go through it. 0, 0, 0, and 0. So you're only running program A.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was no other programming in there.